Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Bethel Park Home Rule Study Commission for February 18th, 2015. My name is Jim McLean. I am the chair of the Home Rule Study Commission. We are here tonight primarily to conduct a public hearing with respect to one particular potential change in the Home Rule Charter that has been under consideration by the Commission, that being whether to change the Home Rule Charter to provide that the Chief of Police, which now reports to Council, should be changed to instead report to the Municipal Manager. Our meeting this evening was advertised, and in a moment we will take any comments from anyone who is present and have a discussion with respect to that particular proposal. To begin, though, I'd like Mr. Spagnuolo, if you could take a roll call of the members.
Yes, sir. Colella?
Here.
Consul Magno?
Here.
Dixon? Dobos?
Here.
Gibbons?
Here.
Hannon?
Present.
Clavan?
Here.
McIntosh?
Here.
McLean?
Here.
Surdy?
Here.
Stewart? 9 present.
So we have 9 members present. One matter of housekeeping. We have the approval of the minutes of our meeting of January 20th, 2015. The minutes of the meeting were circulated to the members of the Commission. Does anyone have any comments? If not, may I have a motion for the approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the minutes of our meeting of January 2nd, 2015. Mr. Spagnuolo, may we have a roll?
Colella?
Yes.
Consul Magno?
Yes.
Dobos?
Yes.
Gibbons?
Yes.
Hannon?
Yes.
Clavan?
Yes.
McIntosh?
Yes.
McLean?
Yes.
Surdy?
Yes.
9-0.
The next item on our agenda is to consider any comments from the public with respect to the proposal to change the Home Rule Charter with respect to how the Chief of Police reports. To provide the public, including those who may be watching on TV, with a little bit of background, this commission was appointed by Council at the end of last summer with the purpose of taking a look at and reviewing the Bethel Park Home Rule Charter that was adopted about 35 years ago and hadn't undergone a complete and thorough review since that time. So we have been meeting since October to do that, to go over that review of the Charter, and have been, at this point, just identifying possible changes for further discussion and consideration. But one item that came out during those discussions was this possibility of changing how the Chief of Police reports. And the thought that developed was that since right now the municipality is in between chiefs, with the former chief having resigned in September, and we've been in a process of selecting a new chief, we thought this would be the right time to undertake the consideration of whether we want to change how the chief reports. It being something that we thought you should consider based on the merits of whether the reporting should be to Council directly or to the manager, and not based on an assessment of who the particular chief was at the time. So with that in mind, what was considered was conducting now a public hearing on that proposal while we continue as a commission hereafter to continue to consider other possible changes to the Charter, which we will continue to do. So what we have done for purposes of this consideration and for the hearing tonight is we provided notice that we are considering this change. We're inviting comments. We have done a draft of what the proposed ordinance would look like, and it is fairly straightforward, but just so that folks in the public know what it is we're actually thinking about doing. Right now, Article 6 of the Bethel Park Home Rule Charter states that the police department shall be administered by a chief of police. He shall be appointed by council and shall be directly responsible to council. The police department shall have all powers and duties granted to it by council under the applicable ordinances and the applicable provisions of law. The chief of police shall not be governed by the provisions of civil service. What is proposed to be changed is only the second sentence of that particular provision, and the change would be to say that the chief of police shall be appointed by council, so that that wouldn't change, and shall be directly responsible to the municipal manager. So the only thing that would be changing is who the chief of police reports to directly. We also asked so that people can have an idea of what this change would mean and also not mean. We asked the solicitor, Mr. McTiernan, to go through the provisions of the ordinance, or the charter rather, as they relate to the chief of police, and just give us an overview of where things would differ if this change were adopted, and then also where they would not differ, where they would remain the same. So, Mr. McTiernan, if you could maybe give us that overview that you've done of the charter and the impact of the proposed change.
Chairman, I'll try to do the same thing. If I fail on that goal, you'll please look. You can help me. But I would say the most important thing to point out is the impact of the change will be minimal with respect to the day-to-day operations of the police department. The chief of police has a special expertise and, in fact, a certification and license from the Commonwealth with respect to law enforcement, as does every certified police officer in Bethel Park. So issues, for example, of training, of assignment, of weapons selection, of things like that that the officers would carry, of equipment, of vans, of response time, the integration of the police department with emergency response to other police departments. That would all remain within the purview of the chief. Those would be law enforcement decisions. The main impact, frankly, would be on the manager. What exists under the current situation is a little bit of an anomalous situation where the manager has overall responsibility for all the departments, but is actually, in effect, somewhat sealed off from the police department. So, for example, the manager is responsible for the budget with respect to all departments. With this reporting change, the chief would have to keep the manager informed with respect to budget issues. Now, council adopts the budget, but the issue of how the expenditures are going, a major expenditure made in the police department to make sure it conforms to the budget, issues of monitoring how the progress of spending is going. That'd be one area where the manager would have more overall knowledge of what's going on in the police department. The other area would be most significantly, I think, the human resources. You know, right now the manager has a lot of experience and a lot of responsibility for human resources. He has to administer the collective bargaining agreements, for example. What happens now is, and of course if there was ever an issue affecting an individual officer, the first person who would make that assessment would be the chief of police. But the manager would be, because of the reporting requirement, able to oversee procedures to make sure things conform to the collective bargaining agreement. And one of the sort of unusual situations we have in Bethel now because of the home rule charter, for example, there's a collective bargaining agreement where some of the employees are in different departments and they report to the manager who oversees the administration of the collective bargaining agreement, but not for operation, but things like vacation and calculation of overtime, assignment of holidays. But that's completely beyond the manager with respect to interpreting the contract. For example, the police dispatchers, they're not police officers, but they're under the police chief. So you can have a situation where you have contradictory interpretations of the collective bargaining agreement. Also things like records. All police records would always remain in the police department. They are police investigative documents. They're highly confidential, and the only people who have access to them are the police chief and certified police officers. But issues such as personnel files would definitely be centralized. Anything related to separate medical files involving workers' compensation things, those would be centralized within the manager. So basically when council would go to the manager or the president of council, they would be able to get information about how's the budget going throughout the community. What's the situation with a new policy? For example, the chief might have a new policy How does that fit in? The interpretation of Family and Medical Leave Act, it should be interpreted the same way for all employees. So I don't mean to run on, but I think the budget area and the personnel area are the two, and then the communication, where instead of the chief meeting with council, once a month, there would be the ongoing communication between the manager and the council about budget issues, personnel issues, policy issues, things that come up. But with respect to the chief, I think other than keeping the manager informed, those decisions would, again, law enforcement decisions would stay with the chief. To touch on a couple of other areas, some home rule charges are very different from Bethel's, and some home rule charges are very different from state law. But council has, and the mayor, very limited roles with respect to the police, but those would be unchanged. The mayor in the home rule charter has a very important function. He's the figurehead for the community, but unlike a borough, he has no responsibility for the police department, which is something I know all of you are aware of. Council has certain narrow and important responsibilities that will be unchanged. For example, the whole process of the selection of a new chief ultimately rests with council. They have to be comfortable with the decision. The removal of the chief under the home rule charter would be with council. And then council makes certain personnel decisions that are very kind of narrowly governed. For example, the council appoints new officers that only from the top 3 scores as certified by the Civil Service Commission. That would be unchanged. Similarly, promotions must be from the top 3 scores. And the examination, application, testing, and ranking of those candidates is all done by the Civil Service Commission, which is independently appointed. It's appointed by council, but the members of the commission serve a fixed staggered term of office to ensure their independence, very much like other communities under state law. And they would still have that basic authority of applications and screening and ranking and testing, and then council's important function would be circumscribed by that, civil service rules. So those would be the main points. And again, the Civil Service Commission procedures would be essentially unchanged. If there was an issue of discipline, the issue might ultimately be made internally, but there's the right to appeal through the bargaining process to arbitration or to the Civil Service Commission. So essentially the powers of each element of the government, municipal government, are pretty much the same. I think what you're going to have is more, and again, I'm not an advocate here, but I think the idea of discussing it would be greater consistency, greater unity of knowledge, a single source of information about policies and how things are done. And then naturally, in a law enforcement issue, council would very well go directly to the chief. And when the manager, I'm sure in some cases would recommend that, a law enforcement issue, assignment issue, crime prevention issue. So again, I appreciate your patience. I hope I didn't go on too long, but that's essentially what I see from a legal standpoint.
2 questions I wanted to ask. One, the charter currently says that the police department shall have all powers and duties granted to it by council under the applicable ordinances and applicable provisions of law. There would not be any change in that particular provision, so that would remain the same.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Different ranks in the police department, all those kind of central issues would still remain with council. And the philosophy of that is they are the elected officials directly responsible to the residents and voters and people. So the basic structural issues would rest with council.
Okay. Well, and then the other question I have, maybe it's more of a statement than a question. All the other department heads under the Home Rule Charter report now to the municipal manager. Is that right?
That's correct. And they each have their area of expertise. I mean, naturally, the manager is not making engineering decisions,
right,
but the engineer reports to the manager, the planner, the public works, and issues of, a lot of things are done internally, the planning of snow routes and things. But all those departments, public works, planning, engineering, finance, all report to the municipal manager, although they have their own responsibilities within their areas of expertise.
Comments or proponents or opponents to the proposal from anyone in the audience wants to address us? Paulette? If you could identify yourself, name, address, and then provide us with your comments.
Pauletta Beeler. I live at 134 Meadowbrook Drive, Bethel Park. I overall am very, very concerned with transparency, accountability, and unity. And I was privileged to be at one work group that you had where the manager, I think it was the manager from Mount Lebanon,
Right.
was present, and he spoke about their system there. I think this particular provision would provide unity so that each department will be accountable in the same way. If I understand it correctly, the way the police department has functioned, the police chief is sort of neither fish nor fowl, not counsel, and not actually treated like other department heads having to report to the manager. And that's just sort of, one out there in left field and everybody else is over here. I think that's a good thing. I really do. I think it not only provides for accountability, but it also provides for transparency. And I always hate to use this term, but I'm going to use it anyway, is, a big brother type situation that somebody is minding the store. Right now there are, 9 on council?
Correct.
And those 9 people are the boss of the chief. So, the chief could talk to one council person and kind of get a go-ahead on something, but it's not really a council decision. I think it leaves space for ambiguity and things that fall through the cracks. And having been there and having heard that particular discussion, I would say that, to anybody listening at home who hasn't been to the meetings, I was critical at one of the council meetings about the study group. And I was invited, anybody can actually come to your work sessions. But, I did come to one, and I was interested. A lot of what you're doing is pretty mundane. I would not want to have to sit there and figure out all the commas and changing the date for reporting this and reporting that, and most people would fall asleep, for that portion. But I think this would be a good thing for Bethel. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you. Paulette, I'll note you weren't really critical. You just had some legitimate questions. And for the benefit of people watching, what Paulette is also referring to, our last meeting, we had municipal manager from Mount Lebanon come in because Mount Lebanon is a community where their chief has been reporting for decades to the municipal manager, and we just wanted to get a sense from him in the position of the municipal manager in the community where that reporting is done, how it works and what it's like. It was not intended to be, well, just because we could find one other community that does it, we'll do it too. But it was helpful to us to get the sense of how it works. Anyone else in the audience who wants to address us, either in favor or opposed? No. So we'll know for the record that there wasn't anyone else. I will add that I did get one email from Richard Kraft, who had indicated that he might try to be here at the meeting tonight, but that if he couldn't, he wanted to provide his comments. The one comment he made was that he wouldn't want the change, if we made it to the charter, to be done in a way that would prevent or that would cause or allow a municipal manager to get too powerful, as he said, and begin to micromanage the police department. I think, as Mr. McTiernan indicated before, we aren't changing, and nor would this change alter the fundamental way in which the department is run and organized, nor change any of the fundamental oaths and certifications that the chief has to abide by in terms of exercising the duties. But it would be similar to the same way that the manager is overseeing and receives the reporting from the other departments. And as we've covered in our discussion, we're not changing any of the other ways in which the department is still governed in some ways by the, as Mr. McTiernan said, the narrow but important role of council that would remain the same. Do we have any other comments or questions from members of the commission? Anything for Mr. McTiernan? I should maybe mention to folks that if they were concerned that this change would maybe put a little bit of distance between council and the chief. All of the department heads currently attend all of both our caucus and public meetings and are available to members of council when we meet to answer any questions that any of us would have. So in that sense, the chief of police's attendance at our meetings would not change. It would be exactly the same. What we're really doing is adding then that reporting function to the municipal manager. Anything further?
May we close the public hearing?
Yes. I'm going to motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. Thank you.